People. Joining me to discuss is the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg. Treasurer, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. So, a bit of admin here, first of all. So, who qualifies for this payment?
Well, there are veterans, pensioners, those on carers payments. Around 5 million Australians who are on income support will get $750 from the federal government starting from this week. It will cost about $4 billion. It builds on the earlier $750 cash payment that went out just after March. And this is obviously reflecting the challenging times that many Australians find themselves in, and those who are on income support are doing it particularly tough.
And how do they get it?
It just happens. They obviously, their details are with the appropriate government agency, and the money will be paid out as it was with the first payment.
Okay. I know you made plans for these two payments, but given how fluid things are at the moment, Treasurer, and especially what's going on in your state of Victoria at the moment, are there any plans for a third payment?
Well, right now our focus is on announcing the future of the JobKeeper, the JobSeeker programs, and giving a fiscal and economic update on the 23rd of July. And as you know, that's been foreshadowed for some time. We recognise that the economy is starting to open up in some states, whereas in Victoria it's obviously going through a particularly difficult time, and our announcements on the 23rd will reflect that reality.
So, may pensioners receive a third $750 payment? Is that possible?
Well, right now we're focused on the second payment. We've only made provision for two payments in the $260 billion worth of announcements to date. And we're very conscious, though, that this $750 payment will help go and meet the daily bills of Australians who are doing it tough, and that may meet their rent, that may meet their food and grocery bills, that may meet their travel expenses.
Okay, not ruling it out though.
Well, we've only got plans for two payments, as we've announced.
Okay, well, you've got childcare that stops today. Treasurer, Labor says it's going to leave parents with a really tricky decision to either pay childcare or having to pull kids out of childcare. Is that an accurate description?
No, it's not. It's just politicking as usual from the Labor Party, which is very unfortunate at this time when we actually need the country to be coming together. They seem to be looking for every opportunity for crass political opportunism. The reality is we've announced a transition plan. That involves the childcare subsidy coming back on. We provided $8.3 billion in childcare support to families. It also involves more than a $700 million transition payment based on the revenue of these service providers in that pre-COVID phase, as well as easing the activity test, which means that those who need support can get up to 100 hours a fortnight of subsidised care. Now in Victoria, we've even made further arrangements that the service providers can waive the gap fee for those who are in the affected areas, which will give the parents the confidence that they can maintain their enrolment, ensure that the parents are not out of pocket, while it's also good news for the service providers because they continue to get paid.
You just talked about your economic report that you're still working on, that is coming up and it's due soon. I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm wondering how much firepower, financial firepower, does the government have left? I mean, surely you can't keep affording to pay all of these different sectors while states keep getting shut down. So you've got this kind of stop-start measure that's in place that the business community, I note today in the papers, is very critical of.
Well, the first thing to say is that we entered this economic crisis from a position of economic strength, Pete. We had a debt to GDP ratio of around 20%, which is a quarter of that in the United States and the United Kingdom, 1/7 of what it is in Japan. We also had the first balanced budget in 11 years, and we had economic growth that was rising in the back half of last year, and unemployment fell in February to 5.1%, bearing in mind when we came to government. that unemployment was 5.7%. So we had got the books in a good shape to be able to get us through this crisis. Now, since that time, we've announced $260 billion of economic support, a record 13.3% of GDP, and that has helped stabilise the economy. It's given not just an economic boost, but also a psychological boost. Now, we'll continue to spend as required, but we're also going to be disciplined. I mean, again, the Labor Party is saying, go and buy an airline, go and spend on this, go and spend on that. We're much more focused on ensuring support gets to the people who need it most, and then you'll see that reflected in our announcement on the 23rd, because we're going to have another phase of income support, which will be targeted at those most in need.
And can you give us any idea on what that will be, on where that will be going?
Well, you'll just have to tune in at that time. But I can tell you, Pete, that it will be consistent with the principles that have governed us well going into this crisis, namely spending that is scalable, targeted, proportionate to the challenge we face, as well as using existing systems.
Well, I mean, the union said it's not going to support those tax cuts that you talked about last week. Is that a concern to you?
Look, I'm not focused on what the unions have to say about tax, because they've never seen a tax hike that they don't like, and never seen a tax cut that they didn't dislike.
Can I just ask you, Helen Clark said on the weekend, and she's of course, you know, steering this investigation into China and the origins of COVID-19. She reckons it'll be at least 2 years before there is a vaccine. Is that the kind of time frame that you're working towards?
Well, the reality is nobody knows when those wonderful scientists and medical researchers who are working on a vaccine will come up with it. What we do know is we have to learn to live with the COVID pandemic, and to ensure that our lifestyle is changed accordingly. And that's why we need to practice the social distancing requirements. That's why we need to be quarantining those who come in from overseas. But what it is a reminder of is that this is, you know, a really difficult time, a once-in-a-century pandemic that started off as a huge health crisis, remains a huge health crisis, but with very significant economic consequences.
The Prime Minister went to the football on the weekend, Treasurer. He's received some criticism from some parts of the community about going to the football. As a Victorian, you're in lockdown at the moment. Did you have any problem seeing those pictures?
Oh, good on him. I mean, the Prime Minister's passionate about his country and he's passionate about his footy. I'd love to go and watch Melbourne Storm or the Carlton Football Club. I just have to travel interstate to do it. But, Pete, what it reminds us of is that we have one country in two stages. We've got New South Wales, which has been opening up, and we've got Victoria, which has been closing down. And this is the unfortunate reality of the spike in cases in Victoria. I note that the Labor Party leader, Anthony Albanese, didn't criticise the Prime Minister, and I can tell you if he thought there was an ounce of political opportunity in that, he would have. And it's, I think, a reality of where most people across the country are at. They understand that the Prime Minister is spending some time with his family, he's going to enjoy the footy, as he can do in New South Wales, while here in Victoria, we're obviously going through a much more difficult period. OK,
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you.